Hello and welcome back to another episode of Rebound with Resilience, a podcast dedicated to raise your resilience, mindset, and mental wellness. And on today's episode, I'm excited to host our second youngest guest on the show, Max. Hi, Max. Pleasure,
Hello.
pleasure to have you. Okay, let me just introduce you a bit of how we met and why I decided to have you on the show. I think Max and I knew each other through a mutual friend, Melody. I think I
Yes.
hosted Melody as well. She's very passionate about animal awareness, and she faced discrimination in the past, and she used it to transform into a drive lah. So you can check out the episode on the podcast. But basically, she referred me to Max. So she was telling me that this gentleman that she knew that's young, passionate about public speaking, passionate about personal development, wants opportunities to speak, and she told me a little bit about your story as well, right? How the certain challenges that you face, the difficult challenges that you face, how you overcome it. And yes, I was just very interested to meet you initially. And when I did eventually speak to you, right, what really spoke to me was your clarity of thought, the way you express yourself. I really like the certain terms and the way you express yourself on failure and education. That's why I invited you to discuss this. And of course, I know that you hosted me on your interview as well.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. That was a while back.
Yeah, how is that? I mean, how the spirit of enterprise. So it's a award they need to nominate people, right? So Max actually
Yeah.
nominated me, and we had
Yes, I
an
did. Yes, I
interview
did.
lah. So I'm just hoping to give you a platform where you can share as well.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so
I'm
yeah, I
flattered.
think I'll just share a little bit more about your background. Okay, now you're currently
Sure.
studying in ITE. You're
Yes, I
doing
am.
community care and social services, right?
Yes. Yes, I
Okay,
am.
and before during your O level year, you actually had a setback where you in tuition class you just lost your memory, just like that, right? There wasn't any
Yep.
specific cause. You lost your memory, and then after that, you were also diagnosed with dyslexia as well as Asperger's lah.
Yep.
So I think it's something that you mentioned to me as well. It's something that we can discuss. But of course, beyond these challenges and conditions, you want to live a purposeful life. You want to add value to people. You don't want to let it stop you. So we really want to explore that a little bit, but how you deal with negativity, how you turn that into your strengths. And I hope to give you also platforms to share in future. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, share me more about Max. How were you like growing up? As a student, what were you passionate about? And then up to the point where that incident actually happened.
So, as in who I was before my memory loss.
Yeah.
All right. So, this is all based on the people around me, what they've told me about my friends' family. So,
Sure.
before my memory loss, I was a very opposite person to who I was. I was very introverted. I was barely doing well in my academics. I had a very few friends and I had a very limited interest. You
Okay.
see, so while I excel in maybe one subject, I failed in all the others.
Mm,
So couldn't really do well in academics. Then somewhere along the lines, had a memory loss thing.
okay. Can you share a little bit more about the incident on the day
Right,
itself?
right, sure. So my story began about almost 2 years ago, little over 2 years ago,
Okay.
on August 23rd, 2018. I was attending my weekly tuition lesson. Because
Mm,
I'm dyslexic, I have to attend an organization called DAS, Dyslexia Association Singapore,
mm,
that helps me to cope with my dyslexia a lot better.
okay.
So on one evening when I was attending their lessons, all of a sudden I just felt as if I woke up. I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't recognize my classmates, my teachers. I didn't even know who I was or where I was at. So obviously at first it seems a bit surreal. So my classmate shrug it off as a joke. My teacher thought that I was just putting a prank. But I think the moment got more serious when they realized the magnitude of the situation,
Mm,
whereby I seriously can't recognize who they are or their names or any of our past experiences together. That's when they realized that this is something that is quite serious.
mm,
So after the lesson has ended, I didn't really finish the lesson. I kind of sat out of it. So after the lessons have ended, I was driven home. My teacher was fortunate enough to drive me home, or to call an
mm,
Uber to drive me home.
okay.
Obviously, when I arrived back home at my doorstep, my parents were there to greet me, and just like any other situation, they are just concerned that because it's just stress. Because at that point in time, I was about less than a month, about a month away from my end of year exam.
Mm.
So they thought that I was not getting enough sleep, so they just said sleep it off. It's nothing big deal. And again, they only realized the magnitude of it when I woke up the next morning, and when my parents asked me to grab my uniform, I couldn't differentiate which was my uniform and which was my brother's uniform.
Mm.
That's when they realized that okay, something's not right.
Okay. And you could recognize your parents, right?
Yes, I
Yeah.
was fortunate. I was fortunate enough to recognize only my parents and my younger brother. That's it.
So when you recognize them, you knew that the association was there. Okay, these are my
Yes.
parents, that they brought me up. But when you, in the moment where you mentioned that you forgot who your friends were, who the teacher was, um, do you know their relation with them? Or no,
Nope,
you
I
just
don't.
you just
No, I
didn't.
don't.
Okay.
No,
But you
it's
know
like
you knew
yeah.
you were in class. You knew you were
I
attending a class.
I didn't even know that I was in class, honestly speaking,
Okay.
because the what it felt to me was that I woke up in a very small room with
Okay.
furniture around, with strangers around.
Okay. And
Yeah.
there was no cause that the doctor kind of diagnosed you with.
Until this day, no, unfortunately, there is no proper diagnosis or not much any understanding of the what happened. It's
Okay.
kind of chalked up as a medical mystery.
I see. I understand that. But of course, beyond that, you how do you then move forward from there after your parents realized?
How did I move forward from
Yeah.
there?
So do you try to recall your past memories? You look through your past items.
In all honesty, I never really saw my situation as a accident. I rather saw it as an incident, as a character build up. So I never saw it as an event that hindered my performance. I
Mm,
saw it as an event of identification to find out who I was. And
okay.
so because of that, I didn't really sought after old pictures. I kind of accepted it real quick, and then I just not say real quick. I accepted it. It took a while, but after I accepted for a while, I just moved on. I focused on the present and I worked towards my future.
Okay. And so you studied for a while, you studied hard, but do you have issues because you mentioned that you couldn't remember? So it was your O level year, right?
At the time, it was my N levels. Yes,
Or N levels, right? So you had to kind of relearn certain things. And
yes, I had to read a lot. Yeah,
okay, of course, though you did your best, and then after that you transition into ITE. So
yeah,
that's where you're at now because that happened 2 years ago, and now you're about 17, turning 17.
yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to ask a little bit more about your perceptions on just taking negativity, taking feedback, and of course studying ITE, right, having certain labels, stereotypes, and like you said, you mentioned they're diagnosed with Asperger's and dyslexia. Are, are there times where people see you differently, and how do you respond to that? Let's talk about ITE first.
All right, sure.
Okay, let's talk about ITE first. So, just a student there, right? Do you see yourself treated differently, viewed differently, or is it okay for you?
I guess for me, because as you say, it's all about judgment, right?
Mm,
So when people first saw the uniform, they were like, "Oh, is it a nursing course?" Things like that. They never thought I was in ITE. And I guess from my point of view, I was fortunate enough to not have experienced any backlash due to where I was studying. But I know of friends in my class whereby they were faced a bad hand. They were given a bad experience because of where they're studying it.
sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to ask about that. So, like among your friends, what is that? Uh, is it like people say? Because I want to try and break stereotypes and at least help people understand a little bit better. At least in society, we have this perception that if you go to ITE, where you're not, you don't have a future, and then people are, you know, not really taking their work seriously. Is that always the case when among your what you've seen so far?
All right. For that judgment alone, it may be accurate maybe 50 years ago when ITE first started up. But now,
Mm,
as time transition on and things evolve, that judgment has slowly withered away. It has now become a myth or sort, almost like a superstition that if you go ITE, you're going to be a bad future.
yeah,
That's not true. If anything, ITE is as good as poly because at the end of the day, it's not where you study that matters, but rather who you are as an individual, how you make of your circumstance. So if you ask me, no, my classmates are not any lower than poly student, or they're not slacking off. They take their work very seriously. They have fun, they're passionate about it, and they do get distinctions, and some of them even got top of the cohort.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, there's a confluence of factors that maybe let them not do as well. And then, of course, go to IT, but it doesn't mean anything, right? Like, that once people make the switch, or, certain factors get s- settled or worked on, then they can start to be more conducive in their studying. They start to
Yeah, of
take,
course.
yeah, because, one thing I always try to understand, to help people with, is like managing the environment, learning how to make the best use of what you're given with. And I want to ask, like, how do you then yourself, right, make the best of what you are given with, or rather the situation that you face?
In terms of ITE or in terms of my story?
I would say, so IT, you spoke about that. Maybe let's speak about IT first. So
Sure,
is there
okay.
anything, that you do outside of school that, anything that puts you in a better position to want to work towards your goals?
So could you repeat the question?
Yeah. So is there anything that you do, or any focus in school, right, that helps you to do better in school?
Anything that I do in school that helps me
Yeah.
focus better in school. I'd say proximity, company. Company plays a huge, huge role, especially in school. There was a saying once that goes by, if you show me your friends, I'll tell you your future. And it's
Mm,
true. I'm not saying that all IT students are bad, but every classroom, they have their own different um cliques. You have the jocks, you have the jokester, you have the popular kids, all these kind of
mm,
things, right? So if you go into any class, whether it's in IT or things like that, it's to me when I first got into ITE, I made sure that I was careful before I surround myself with, because whoever I surround myself with will play a major role as to how I'll become or how I turned out by the time I
mm.
graduate. So
Okay.
because of that, I chose my friends carefully, and thankfully now my friends help me to focus on my study, to help encourage me, help support me.
Sure.
And I think because of them, it's one of the reasons that I help myself or try to improve myself.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because this podcast, I mean, I was thinking of target audience, right? Mainly students that can relate to you, right? As well as maybe parents who want to advise their kids, lah. So having the right association is important. Let's move on to talk about, like you mentioned, the dyslexia as well as Asperger's. You face difficulty because of that, and how do you respond to it?
Difficulties. Well, there are many, honestly, there were many difficulties, whether that is from other people or from myself. From my own standpoint, difficulties I face is mainly expression, because dyslexia is a learning based condition that
Okay.
affects the way I learn, and Asperger's is a behavioral condition, so it affects how I interact. Right, so I couldn't interact with many of my own peers, and I couldn't learn the same way as my peers. So that those two alone already sets me on a different path than my peers itself. So how I evolved around that is that I don't shunt away from it. I don't run away from it. I kind of embrace it as who I was. I accepted it, and I try to find a way to work things around, find other ways to learn, find other ways to express myself. But from an outside
Mm,
point of view, discriminatory wise, I don't believe that I've been discriminated. I'm not
mm,
sure, because people oftentimes judge based on first impression, right?
yeah.
And I think it's because of the way I carry and present myself. A lot of people always assume that I'm from Poly or from Express, so they never really saw me as someone with Asperger or someone with dyslexia. So they don't
Yeah.
really judge me off the bat.
Right. Right. Okay. Um, I think that's important that you yourself, even though you mentioned that. You- sorry. Let me
No,
just.
bless you.
Don't worry, I can edit out that part. I just need a while. Okay. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it's important, like, because one thing that initially struck me was that you're quite open with the conditions that you face. You don't have any embarrassment towards it, and you accept it, and
Yeah,
you
of
work
course,
you
of
work your way
course.
around it. I think that is sometimes difficult for people. At least for the people that I speak to, right? They feel as if their judgment is on them, and that they feel themselves a bit differently, lah. So do you have any advice for people who maybe in a similar situation to you, but you may not be your condition specifically, but it can be anything that leads them to feel like they are different from other people. What advice will you give to them?
One advice I'll probably give to those who fear judgment of others is that the opinion of others don't matter unless the person that's coming from matters, if that makes sense. So the opinion of others doesn't matter unless the person who is giving the opinion matters to you.
Okay.
If it's family or friends, then yeah, of course it matters, But
Right.
that being said, if the evidence or if the opinions are something that belittling you or something that brings you down,
Yeah.
forget about it. It doesn't matter who they are. If they're your own parents, if they're your own friends, that shouldn't be the case. Because even if they're your parents, you should not feel like your worth is not there or your value is reduced because of others' opinion. If the opinion brings you enlightenment or makes you go higher, and the opinions are from those people that matters to you, then that's all that matters. If it's from strangers, if it's from commenters online, whatever the case is, it doesn't matter. We all have our own life to live. We are too busy to care about others' opinion.
Right. I like that. That shows your strength as well. I would say that sometimes, it does matter, but it's important to sieve out who are the trolls and who are the ones that genuinely want to provide feedback. So it goes back to what you said, right? For commenters that really genuinely want to provide feedback, then they matter to me, right? They matter to me. That's why I want to take the opinion seriously. But if you're just trolling around, right, then yeah, you learn how to filter that. And what I really like when you mentioned that, like for parents, right? Know that they love you. That's why they're doing that. But also take it as a way to make yourself stronger, right? Any feedback you're taking, any opinion, it's a feedback for you, right? And you don't need to take
Exactly, yeah.
right. So again, this links back to one thing that again very striking about your personality is that you are a constant learner. You're very open to learn and very open to new experiences. So I really want to explore that with you because I want you to encourage people also to do it. I think a lot of people are afraid of trying new things. Yeah. So let's go a little bit into education now, okay? Now that we talked about how you deal with negativity, let's talk about education. So what does education mean to you?
What does education mean to me?
Yeah.
All right. So education is, by its layman's definition, is the action to educate, and to educate is to learn. So to me, what education is about learning. It's not about memorizing or things like that. It's to actually learn. Whether we learn more about ourselves, we learn to improve, and then as such. To educate is to learn. That's what it means to me.
Okay, nice. Do you feel that growing up, right, like, even in school and now in ITE, in various schools you have gone to, right, what do you feel are the main stresses that students face or the main concerns that they face?
I guess based on academic alone, based on school alone, the two main stresses that I would say right off the bat is expectations and academics. These two, to me, I have seen these two kill more spirit than anything else I've ever seen for youth and adolescents.
Sure.
Because as kids or as children, we always want to make our parents proud. No kid want to disappoint our parents.
Sure.
Right. So we want to do our best, we want to be our best, we want to show them that, hey, you raised me and you raised me well.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing, is expectation from parents. And for friends, no one wants to be left out. Even if you're a kid, we all want to have a sense of inclusion. It's not exactly your fault. We are humans. That's how we are programmed. That's how we are biologically. We are social creatures. So that's the first one. But fueled by the second one, academics. We live in a society whereby now we are so revolved and orientated around a grade on a piece of paper that it sometimes is seen diminishing a student's value. So what do I mean by this? A good grade means you get a good life. That's not true. Right? So when you put in these two, you can see the stress that a student nowadays sees. They want to get a good grade and they want to live up to expectation.
Right.
So when you combine these two pitch together, you realize that a lot of them get burned out, they get stressed, they lost their sense of meaning, they feel useless, they feel worthless, and you can just see the dreams that they have, the ambition they have, the potential, all get extinguished or locked away simply because they don't meet those expectations or
Mm,
because they failed geography, for instance.
yeah, yeah.
So I say
Wow,
these two are by far the most stressful
wow,
things.
yeah, yeah. You describe it really well, really articulate in your expression. How can they then develop a perspective shift? Because you must have spoken to some of them, right? And you yourself, how did you yourself get out of that? I'm curious to know. Because you can identify that,
Get
right?
out of it.
Yeah, you can identify it because the way you describe
Yes.
it is so good, but how then you then yourself help deal with that?
I okay, I'll be honest, I was not perfect all along. There was in time, especially when I first woke up from my memory loss,
Yeah,
I was very orientated with grades and academics. I wanted to
sure.
meet expectations. But eventually over time, those kind of withered away because I'll give you an example. One of it was I'm someone who is an avid learner, right?
Mm,
I see lessons in everyday situations,
okay.
right? And so there was one time in secondary school, we were training for our NAFAs, right? We had to
Okay.
run 2.4, and I'm someone who always want to improve and learn and things of such. So my first timing for my NAFA was about 14 minutes. So I was like,
Okay.
okay, I want to go faster.
Sure.
Then 40 minutes become 30 minutes, 30 minutes become 11 minutes and 12 seconds. That was my final record for NAFA.
Mm,
And at that point in time, I'm not sure what happened, but for some reason, it just clicked. Because with consistency, with practice, you can become better in a way. And I guess during those moments, seeing my timing reduce and seeing how I focus and stuff like that, I realized that, you know, yeah, I can run this fast. And the satisfaction I get from
right.
it is almost like I got full marks for my score or for my
Mm,
exam.
wow. I
And
like
then
the point.
and
Yeah,
then that
carry
got
on.
me that got me thinking, it's like, wait, if grades are so important, why am I feeling the same level of satisfaction for something like NAFA?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. If grades are like up here, NAFA should be down here, then that satisfaction reward, that sense of um accomplishment should be the same or
Yeah.
should be as respective. But
Sure.
instead, they're the same thing. So that got me thinking, why is that so? And after that, I looked around me. Well, I mean, look at my juniors, because as I was one of the pioneers for the special educational needs support group in my
Sure.
school. So I had to look at my juniors, and I realized I can see the potential. A lot of them can draw, they can sing, they can dance. They are amazing with engineering, with design, things of such.
Yeah.
And when I look at those potential, I realize that their grades does not support that, and they soon fall out their passion. It hit me, and it got me thinking, why should it matter?
Yeah.
If you look outside, you can see people like Usain Bolt. He runs for a living. He could get F for mathematics, but he can still make more money than
Mm,
those who got A for mathematics.
mm,
Or for example, like Elon Musk.
mm,
He himself said it. He does not have an aerospace degree, but the people
sure.
that work for him does.
Mm,
And that's what kind of hit me, whereby grades are important, but they are not the only thing that matters.
mm,
So once I had this realization, I applied those realizations to myself. I'm like, okay, I'm bad at mathematics. My English is barely there at the time,
sure.
and my science is all over the place.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I'm any less worthy. I
Mm.
know this because I saw myself helping others. I'm able to articulate well. I'm
Ah,
able to
that's
speak
the
and
key.
such.
That's the key. I want to talk about that, but you carry on first. You
I
carry on.
saw this. I saw myself doing all these kind of things. Where I'm able to
Yeah.
articulate. I'm able to help others. I'm able to console others. Things like such, and it all adds value to me. And then
Sure.
that's when I realized that grades are not that important. They are important, but are not as important as things such as self-worth and value and self-value and things of such.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's one on academics.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So, like, through the process of thinking, applying, acting, you start to discover that the process is just as important as the end result, and the satisfaction you gain from improvement, from learning, which is your definition of education. Also, you start to get a true essence of education, and then, uh, one thing you mentioned as a key thing is that you start to realize that your worth, you have genuine worth when you're helping other people with special needs, when you are serving them. You don't need F, you don't F, you don't need an A in math to do that. Of course, you do your best for it, right? But know that to diversify your value, lah. I think one thing where Max, I want to share with you also is to any listeners is, in principle, right, the best thing is to define your worth on constants, things that don't change, right? Things that are variables that change, you don't define your worth on that because they can change anytime. But in reality, it's very difficult. As human beings with attachment, it's very difficult. So the next best option is to diversify your worth. That means find different things that you're good at, right? And then, yes, even one thing you don't do as well, you have still other things as well that you can do and pride your worth on. And those things, likelihood that you will still be able to do them, even if one of those doesn't do well. So, yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
precisely.
Yeah.
I mean, self-worth, one thing I learned along the way is that self-worth is not restricted to an action or a trait that you have. Your worth comes from a variety of things, and individual's worth is determined by their own judgment. It's just
Sure.
because you're bad at mathematics doesn't mean you're any less good than someone else who's great at mathematics. It's the
Sure.
same thing. Your worth is the same.
Right.
It's like a toolbox. Everyone has a different purpose, different function, different worth, but we're all equally important.
Yeah. Nice. You should definitely eventually go into public speaking. Keep building it up because I know that one day you will be able to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Also
Okay.
too.
So I think we touched a bit on education as well as dealing with the main stresses that students face by priding your worth on different things, on knowing that education is a journey. The next thing I want to ask is on resilience, right? Because the theme of the podcast. What does resilience mean to you?
Okay, all right. So, what does resilience mean to me? I guess to me, resilience, from a linguistic standpoint, resilience is resistance, right? You're able to bounce forward. You're able to, you're able to be resistant against all odds. No
Sure.
matter what is pending towards you, you're still able to overcome that. So
Yeah.
that to me is what resilience is all about. Experiencing setbacks and moving forward, but moving forward with experience and knowledge this time.
Nice. And how do you develop your own resilience?
How did I develop? Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
How did I develop my own resilience?
You met failures, you met setbacks along the way, right? And
oh yes, definitely,
and,
especially the first few days.
yeah. So
Definitely
how
first
was
few
that?
days.
How was that? Then how do you? What were some cornerstones or factors that helped to build your resilience?
One of the main pillars that supported the foundation of my resilience was the need to prove people wrong. Because when I first woke up from memory loss, 15, so the circumstance was a 15-year-old boy, completely fine, no past medical history, suddenly comes back to school claiming to have no memory at all weeks before his exam. Sounds a bit suspicious, right? And I don't blame them, but it was because at that point in time, I had classmates, I had schoolmates, I had teachers even who were questioning the legitimacy of myself. They're saying like, oh, he's just faking it to get out of exam. It's like, oh, he's doing this for attention. Oh, he's faking it because he wants, he wants whatever he can get out of it.
Right.
And at that point, of course, I was a bit affected by it. I wasn't affected that much, but I was still affected by it because, from my point of view, it's why are you doing this to me? I've already been dealt a bad hand. Why are you still so insistent to give me more bad things? Why do you still claim that I'm a liar? Why do you still think that I'm faking it? I'm already suffering so much. Why do you want to add more to it? It doesn't make sense. So that was how I felt at the beginning. So eventually I had enough of it. I grew tired of it. And I'm like, you know what? If you say all that, wait and see. I'll prove you wrong. I will walk out here. I'll graduate from this school and you will all be there at my ceremony, graduating the same time as my peers. So how I build my resilience is mainly out of tiredness. Have you ever been undervalued, whereby you could do more, but you're not given the opportunity to? And that level of what do you say, the level of energy that builds up because you
Yeah.
know you can do more, but you can't.
Yes.
That was how I felt, whereby
Right.
a lot
I
of
love that.
people, a lot of people saying
Yeah.
that, oh, he can't do this, oh, he can't
Yeah.
do that.
Wow.
I can't look them in the eye because
Yes.
I couldn't get a chance to see them. But I was like,
Sure.
if these are people that are in front of me, I can't wait to go over them and to look behind me and say bye to them as I walk my way out the door.
Sure.
So one of the things that built my resistance and my resilience is probably the need to it's not to prove them, by the way. Now this thing is to prove them. All of this is to prove myself. Because
Yeah.
I know it sounds like I'm trying to prove them something.
Sure.
That's one of the byproducts. But the main end product is trying to prove to myself that although, yeah, I was dealt a bad hand, I have bad stressors, I have people who don't believe in me, but that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, this is my race. This is what I can do. This is what I choose to do. I don't need other people to come and tell me what I can or can't do. It's not for them to say.
Sure. Yeah.
If I don't even know what I can or can't do, how can you know what I can or can't do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I use that as fuel to launch myself, to propel myself forward,
Wow.
and that was one of the foundations that built my resistance.
Wow, that's great. But wow, I mean, I relate to that so much. Like, is it the initial burst is because you have this pent up energy? You know you can do so much more, right? You're getting judged, and you know you can do so much more. If ever you're listening to this and you're in that position, right? There will come a point in time where you're tired, you're sick and tired of it, and you say, you know what, forget it. Like, I'm not even bothered about what people say anymore. I'm just gonna focus on running my race.
Yes.
And that's what you did. That's what I did. That's what you did. And then from there, that evolved to something else. Along the way, we evolved to other things as well. But it began with that. Wow. Amazing. So I love that, and of course, after that, after you matured out of that stage where you really kind of proved to yourself, right? Is there any other one or two things that you could give feedback to people or rather action steps to people to build their resilience? Maybe is it your perspective to failure? Let's talk about this, right? Because the way you explain failure to me, I really enjoy it. So describe to me, right, what is a good perspective towards failure?
A good perspective towards failure. Good perspective. Okay, I know that failure is a very scary thing. Personally, I myself have failed many, many things from project works and promises and things of such, right? But it's not so much. You can't see failure as a death sentence. If you failed once, like, okay, I'm not doing it again. No, that's not for me. No, everyone has started from somewhere, right? So how I will oftentimes see failure or perceive failure is that I perceive it as a lesson. Because there was a quote that once said that if you fail and you get back up, you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. And I think that kind of rang true with the whole theme of failure.
Wow.
Failure is not meant to be an executioner. Failure is meant to be a teacher to tell you what didn't work, so you can find out what can work. So I guess that's my perception. Failure is a teacher, not an executioner.
No, I love it. I love it. I know initially you mentioned a point that it's tough to take initially. I think that's true. I think sometimes we also need to work on changing that paradigm. I think as long as people have the paradigm that their worth is related to their grades, they will always face that. We call it personalization, right? And then we talked about earlier about how we can get out of that paradigm by doing something else and taking pride in diversifying your worth on something else. Yeah. We're coming towards the end of the podcast, but I just want to ask you two last questions.
Sure.
What is one message you have for youth around your age, or just youth in general? What's one message you want to share then?
One message I want to share. Keep standing. I know it sounds really mundane, or probably sounds very
I feel it really exemplifies you. I think I got goosebumps when you said that.
But seriously, like that's all that matters is that because especially as a youth, you still have a lot more life, a lot more days ahead of you left. And over time you're gonna meet obstacles, people, circumstance, event, situation that is gonna bring you down, that is gonna tell you you're not good enough, that's gonna say that you're not worth it. It's gonna say that your dreams are obnoxious, it's gonna say that your ideas are crazy. But just keep standing. You don't have to do much, just keep standing, keep smiling, keep believing in yourself, and just go out and pursue it. Remember,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's your goal, it's your idea, it's who you are. You don't need external validation. Sure, external validation is nice, but believe me, self-validation is as nice, or if not more satisfying than external validation. So whatever happens, just keep standing, just keep smiling, and have
Yeah.
fun.
Wow.
Have fun in whatever you do.
Love it. I love it, Max. You're motivating me. I feel like I need to go out and run now. I feel like I need to go out and run 10 rounds now. No, but yes, thank you so much for sharing. I think just one last question. Speaking of dreams, what are your dreams, right? What is your aspirations for yourself?
What is my dreams? All right, I know it sounds very cliche, but my dreams, in all honesty, is to be free. Like it sounds very it sounds very abstract, but bear with me. My
Mm,
goal, my dream is to be free, financially free, time free, or things of such, so that you know I want to be financially free so that I'm able to help more people. There's one thing that my mom always says is that the richer you are, the cheaper things become, and it's true.
okay.
And the reason why I want to do this is because I find that our current understanding, our perception on things discussed in this podcast, failure, academics, and things of such, self-worth, all these are not exactly in a good term. And I want to do my part to help those, especially the youth in our country, whereby they are now in doing exams, and whereby we have elderlies putting their expectation upon us living our life for the sake of others, pursuing our parents' dreams. As honorable as that is, it's not ideal in the long run. So what's my aspiration and dream? My aspiration and dream is to be financially free so that I'm able to use those resources to help those in need or those others to achieve their dreams as
Wow,
well.
okay. That's amazing. We need to work together one day, when you
Hopefully
turn
so. That'd be
a little
great.
bit
That'd be
a little bit
great.
older, legal age. Maybe I can work with you. I will for sure. No, that's will not I will not maybe. So I'm looking forward to your growth, Max. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Especially, yeah, thank you for being here, especially for you listening to this, right? I think it's really very motivating and encouraging to hear from your story, despite some people might label it as a adversity or tragedy. You use it as a springboard
Of
and you
course.
use it to spring where you are today, right? So I'm so happy and very proud of you.
Thank you.
All right, Ken. Where can people find you, Max? Instagram.
Good question. Where can people find me? Instagram wise, I think you can find me on Instagram,
Okay,
Maximus, so MAXX_ZIMUS234. So
sure.
that's my account.
Okay, you
Although
must
there
post some stuff,
is a rumor of me
Okay.
starting something else.
Oh, I see.
I will try. I'm not that active, but
Okay.
there is between you and
Talk,
me, there is a rumor of a new project coming up.
Okay.
So hopefully that you
Sure.
see me more active on that project.
Can. I will link it.
Sure.
Thank you for listening or watching. Stay tuned for the next episode. Share it around if it helps other people as well. Stay resilient, stay authentic, and keep standing.
All right.
Okay,
See
bye.
ya. Bye.